Howdy. Happy Sunday, my friends and family, and happy New Year, soon to be New Year. Excited about today's mindset topic. I'm going to give people an opportunity to arrive, but I hope you guys are all having a beautiful day and that you're excited for 2025 and to see what it all has in store for us. Now, today's discussion is going to be chunky. It's a chunky boy, a lot of meat here. I would love for you to grab a piece of paper and a pen. Actually, a notebook if you have one. A journal notebook would be ideal because you'll need multiple pages. There's a lot to cover, so I may appear as if I'm going fast, but a lot of things are going to be a little repetitive in there because there's some key concepts that will keep showing up. And so you'll start to catch the pattern here. But while you're doing that, so for those of you that already have a journal and a pen with you, amazing, you came prepared. And for those of you who don't, go and get that. And while we are waiting for you, I want to start off by just warming the chat up and hearing from you guys. What are you grateful for today? Tell us in the chat what you are grateful for today. I'll start us off. Today, I am grateful for all of the incredible, loving relationships that I have in my life, my beautiful friends, family, my kid. I'm so grateful for just all of the loving people that are around in my world. I don't even know what I would be doing all the things that I do for without them. So I'm grateful that they are here to push me, to guide me, to love me, and to show me how to love, which is one of the most beautiful things. Awesome. So Richard said he's grateful for his health. Yes, you are a wonderful, healthy man. So grateful for your health as well. River Falls says health and family, beautiful. Jose said he's grateful to be able to wake up and spend time with his family. Yes. Bryant says, I'm grateful to be on this side of the dirt. Very, very true. We're all alive, which is incredible. We've shown up here today. That means we're living and breathing. We have breath in us, and that is beautiful. Josh said, grateful for life. Yes, absolutely. Gosi, thank you so much, Gosi. Gosi said, I'm grateful for me. The Astro community has changed our life, and you don't know where you would be without it. I don't know where I would be without you guys as well. So thank you for the reciprocal nature of the things that we do in the community. I get so much value, so much purpose, and I feel so called to grow and to do better every day because of the position that I'm in within that community. So thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity to be that and to do that. It is so wonderful. Pansy is grateful for all of her new entrepreneur family members. Pansy, I love you. We got to spend some time together in Puerto Rico, and I got to know Pansy, and she is just a jewel of a human being. If you guys don't know her, connect with her. Absolutely wonderful person. Derek is grateful for communities like this. Likewise, brother, I absolutely adore this community. It is so magical, so wonderful, and full of just opportunity for understanding and for growth, which I think we're all really here to do, right? We're here to understand who we are and to see the things and accept the things that make us up and to change and grow through the things that we want to evolve. Let's see here. We'll do a few more. Howard Wildly says he's grateful for all of his amazing friends and for joining real estate. Yes. And Craig says he's grateful for all the beautiful and incredible people that he's been fortunate enough to meet and surround himself with through his days. Love you, Craig, and thank you for that as well. Boy, my voice is hoarse. Terry Contreras says she is grateful to be alive, to be in pretty okay health, for family and all the things that she has to facilitate an okay life. Terry, I would say let's change the word from okay to amazing. Today, I want to help us get there. And you are such an amazing human being. You are far better than okay. Let's get that reframed into an amazing life. Craig, I'm also grateful for you. John is grateful for his 4 healthy sons. And Robert is grateful for having a why. Sean, grateful to wake up, family, friends, and the community. Thank you so much, Sean. And Dimitri, grateful for the United States, the Millionaire Factory, and also grateful for health. And I would say, Dimitri, you should be grateful for land wholesaling and for the lack of people who are your competitors in land wholesaling. Don't think I don't pay attention to the things you say on Wholesale Hotline, my bro. All right, so we're going to dive into this today. And thank you guys for joining. I want to ask and pose the next question. Who here that is with us today feels as if they are called for more, that they are meant for more in life? If you feel like you are meant for more in life, please put an X in the chat. If you feel that you are meant for more in life, please put an X in the chat. I need you to claim it today. Good. Hopefully all of you are putting an X in the chat. Participate with me, guys. We've got about 65 of you here with us right now. This audience will grow through the hour. Let's get the chat going so that the algorithm pushes this out to more people, so more people can have a better 2025 than they had at 2024. Yes. X in the chat. Claim it. All right. So we feel that gut feeling that tells us that we're meant for more. And typically, that's not always the best feeling, right? Let's just call it what it is. When we feel that we're meant for more, it's a realization that what we're doing right now isn't enough, or that what we are right now, we could do better. We could do better than, right? And so knowing that we have this capacity, this greater capacity within us to do, have, and be better, to be more, there's that feeling, that negative emotion that comes as a result, right? And that gut feeling, that sense of, is this it? Is this all I'm meant for? To wake up and go to my job and work for 8 hours a day for another person, to make them wealthy, to then come home, to be overwhelmed, so overwhelmed with what I did in the 8 hours of my day, that I eat bad food, that I, fall into social media traps and get sucked away into TikTok. I don't pay much attention to my family, and I maybe have, some substances to kind of create or numb myself from the reality of my life. And I go to bed and I wake up and I do it again. Right? This is a really common cycle in life. And how do I know what it is? Because I've done that, right? And I've been in that cycle myself. So I'm not here to judge. I'm not here saying to anybody, if you're feeling this, that there's something wrong with you. In fact, it's the exact opposite. If you're feeling this, that means that you have a higher vision, that you are called for more, and that today is the day that we are going to answer the call, right? Today is the day that we're going to answer the call, because we understand and we feel that we are meant for more. Now, Maxwell Maltz, if you guys see my eyes moving, I've made some extensive notes today, so I'm going to be reading from them. This is not off the cuff. This is prepared, right? So Maxwell Maltz, who wrote Psycho-Cybernetics, was also a plastic surgeon, right? He was also a plastic surgeon. And what he found in his surgery practice was that no matter what external thing a person changed, when they came out of it, they were still miserable. Now, here's what he saw. A lot of people that would come into his practice, and let's just say they had a big nose, right? They got a big nose, and they're like, I really feel like if I changed my nose, if I had a smaller nose, if I had a little Michael Jackson nose, that I would have a much better life. My self-image would be so much better. I'd be more confident. And if I was more confident, maybe I'd have a better relationship. And if I had a better relationship, maybe I'd have more luck with my career. And if I had more luck with my career, maybe I'd have, a better life in general, right? And so this all comes back to the fact that I got this giant gonzo nose that's just holding me back. And so if I fix this thing, if I fix this trunk, I will be a better person. Now, what Maxwell found, of course, is that no matter what he did to the nose or any other body part for that matter, that the person was just as miserable as they were going in, right? Because the reality is no matter where you go or what you change, there you are. No matter where you go or what you change, there you are. So many people feel that because they're in that feeling, right? They get that sense of, is there more? Am I meant for more? I'm supposed to be doing more. So what do? They change their job, right? They move cities. They break up with their significant other and they find a new relationship, right? Who's done one of these things? Who's changed an external factor because that sense of, is there more, happened, it bubbled up, and then they changed an external factor. They moved somewhere, they changed their job, they changed their lover, they altered an exterior or an external factor. Who's ever done that? If you've done that, just write me in the chat. I want to see that. I have done that as well, by the way, guys. I absolutely did that. And case in point, when I moved from Canada to the United States in my when I was 30 years old, I had just lost all that money in real estate in Canada, and I thought, man, if I just move, if I just go somewhere and I change my environment, I'll be a different person. I'm going to be a better guy, and better things will happen for me. And nothing changed for so long. Nothing really changed until I made the internal changes, right? And so look at this. Focused Life says, I've moved 5 times in the last 12 years. I so get that. 3 states, my goodness. And how expensive and how disruptive and how hard is it to do that, right? Every time we change an external thing like a job or our home or our city or our relationships, it requires a tremendous amount of work. It's massively disruptive to the rhythm of our life. And so doing that isn't easy or cheap, right? It's pretty expensive. And even just on the career side, like if you're in a career and you change jobs all the time, well, what's going to happen? You're not building any security for yourself. There's no pension, there's no tenure there, there's no advancement. And so we're just hitting the reset button constantly over and over and over again. So what we have come to understand in that is that your internal image or your identity, okay? So I want you to understand what that means. Your internal image, how you feel about yourself, how you see yourself is your identity. And that is much, much greater to your life than your external image of yourself. Okay, your internal image is much greater than your external image. So your identity, who you are, is the absolute thing. It's fundamental for us. Now, this is the reason why so many of us will make these incredible New Year resolutions, and within a couple of weeks, they're done, right? In fact, 90% of people who set New Year's resolutions give up on them in the first 2 weeks. I've done it, right? I had set New Year resolutions for myself for an entire decade, between the age of 30 to 40. Overweight, right? I was tremendously overweight, and every year I would set a resolution to lose 50 pounds every single year. Jamil, you're going to lose 50 pounds this year. You're going to lose 50 pounds this year. If you lose 50 pounds this year, you're going to have an entirely different view of yourself. You'll get roles as a comedian. People will like you more. Your girl will like you more. Everything is going to be better. You'll figure out how to make more money. Just this 50 pounds is what's holding you back in life. And I was never able to accomplish it. And it didn't happen until I changed my identity about myself. Because what we understand, and Carl Jung, for those of you who are familiar with Carl Jung was the protege of Sigmund Freud. Now, I believe Carl Jung to be a much more impactful psychologist to the world of that study than Freud, for that matter, because of his understanding of the unconscious, right? The unconscious that drives so much of what we're doing. Now, what Carl Jung said was, show me the boy at 7 and I'll show you the man. Show me the boy at 7 and I'll show you the man. What did he mean by that? Show me the boy at 7 and I'll show you the man. Well, what we've also learned in research is that our stories, our fundamental identity is shaped between the ages of 0 and 7 years old. So the things that happen to us as a child are shaping the projections that we are making in our lives today, right? Those core memories, those core uh, experiences are shaping the projections and the identity that we have of ourselves today, right? So if you think about that, right, how hard is that for us to have to reconcile? Because there's so many things. I mean, we absolutely have no control of what happens to us between the ages of 0 and 7. We're at the mercy of our environment. We are at the mercy of our parents, of our social structures, our economic structures. We can't do anything about it, right? I can't change my parents. One of the things I've come to the realization was for myself, because you know, part of the fact that I became so heavy, and I was heavy for so many years. My mom, right? My mom shows love through food and feeding me. And so if she fed me and I didn't eat, she would take offense to that. It would feel like for her, I was rejecting her love. I was not giving her or showing the love. And then I would feel that interaction. I'd feel that rejection. And so I created this story that by eating, I was showing love. I was exchanging love, right, with another person. And so eating became a way that I would find to love myself at some level, right? That's why I'm so excited when I eat chicken wings. Still to this day, my girlfriend described it as I become an 8-year-old boy. It's 7, okay, but I become a 7-year-old boy when I'm in the presence of chicken wings. Why? Because it's that same sense of love that I would get with my mom, right? That sense of exchange of I'm feeding myself, I'm loving myself, and that core story that I have has definitely been there in my life. Now, what we have to understand is that our identity, right? So our identity is actually formed by our stories. Our identity is formed by the stories we tell ourselves. Now, a lot of these stories that we tell ourselves are untrue. They're absolutely not the reality of what's happening, right? Now, is it true that my mom doesn't love me or feels unloved by me when I don't eat or overeat? Does that make any sense in my world as an adult right now? Does it make any sense that the amount of love that I have between my mother and I, and how much love she has for me, that it's quantified by how much food I'm eating? No. It makes absolute no sense, right? There's no basis in reality to that story, yet that story very much was a driving factor in my life, right? Now, what we understand is that by realizing what those stories are, right, we now are able to come to terms and create an awareness about what we are working with, right? You got to know what you're working with in life in order to have anything change. And so, what I want us first to do is understand that regardless of a story being negative or untrue, that when we create these stories, we're not doing it out of malice. We're not doing it out of a desire to hurt. In fact, we can pretty much understand and know that almost every negative action that we do has a positive intent behind it. I'm going to say that again. Almost every negative action we do has a positive intent behind it. Now, that can get really deep and you can go down into a rabbit hole in there. And I'm just going to quickly peek my head in so that you guys can understand, right? Let's just say, for instance, overeating. Okay. So you overeat. That's a negative. That's a negative trait, a negative behavior. Okay. Now, there have been survivors of assault, right? Like, I don't want to say the word SA, but you understand, survivors of SA, female survivors of SA and male survivors of SA have had um, have become heavy in their adult lives, right? Extremely heavy in their adult lives, and they've overeaten a lot. Now, why would that be happening? Well, some of them and many of them who experienced that did so that they would be less desirable to their attackers, right? And so the positive intent was to save ourselves, was to protect ourselves from the unwanted attention of the opposite sex, and or the same sex, whatever that is, right? So we overeat and we make ourselves this version so that we can stave off or push away this unwanted attention. And that story, right? Of, if I overeat, if I make myself unattractive, I will protect my body from future harm, right? Okay, let's talk about alcohol and drugs. And Dimitri is absolutely right about this. And I can also say that I've had that same experience in my life. I've had the same behavior. I've been very open with all of you guys and sharing the fact that I have struggled in my life with addiction. And that when I was in those cycles of addiction, what I was always trying to do was just protect myself. I was trying to protect myself from feeling those terrible emotions, right? From facing the grief, from facing the reality of what I was living in. I would numb myself through pain pills and alcohol so that I could just ignore it, so that I could forget that it was a thing in my life. Now, that's an absolute protection mechanism. And I can say that the intent behind it was positive. I was trying to protect myself. I'm trying to survive. But the behavior, the coping mechanism that I'm using to do so is absolutely destructive, right? And so let's take it from the opposite point of view. What about those people who believe that when they drink alcohol, they loosen up and they get into a party and they're like the life of the party, right? And you can see that, hey, maybe alcohol in this specific instance isn't such a bad thing, right? Because now you're making more connections with people, you're doing better in a social circumstance. So there's that aspect of it that's positive. But there's the double-edged sword of what that happens or what that becomes when you're sitting in your room by yourself with a bottle of vodka and a handful of prescription drugs, and you're just doing it to numb out the pain. And that's the slope, right? That's where we end up getting to. That's the slippery slope that you can get down when you're in that cycle of addiction. And so the reality is these negative behaviors, they compound, and they end up ruining our lives. And it's not just like a year that this affects you for, right? It's not just 5 years that it affects you for, or a decade. Some people are in these cycles for decades, right? Like 20, 30, 40 years, their entirety of their life. And then they come to that stage when they say to themselves, I'm too old, I'm too broken for anything to change. And I can absolutely tell you that none of us are too old or too broken. None of us. We all have the opportunity to adjust. We all have the opportunity to evolve. So let's get into the 4-step process. All right. The 4-step process on how to shift our identity. Okay. The first is realize, okay? Realize the stories that you are attached to, that you are projecting. Realize them. Okay, so we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to tell ourselves the truth and look back and uncover some of these difficult things. I would absolutely recommend working through some of these, especially if you have some pretty traumatic experiences from childhood that you need to work through. The working through with a therapist is absolutely key. You can, I have no affiliate to Better Health, but Better Health is a telehealth organization that you can find a licensed therapist to work with. Now, I've been working with a therapist for the last year, and I can tell you guys, it has been a game changer for me. My relationship with my therapist is one of the most honest ones I have, and I can just say all of the things. And then I can get an outside opinion, a third party opinion on what's real, what I'm imagining, and what I have an opportunity to adjust, right? So, number one, realize the stories you're attached to. Okay. So I'll give you guys another example for myself. And here's a story that actually didn't have a negative, super negative impact on me for the most part, but has had some negativity that has come to me in my life after as a result. So as a young boy growing up in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, East Indian as culturally and ethnically, also socioeconomically came from lower middle class, right? So baseline poverty. And because I was overweight, I was picked on and bullied, not only by other students in my school, but even teachers in my school. Now, one of the things that I did as a young boy was I was obsessed with Michael Jackson. I absolutely adored that guy. And I would watch his music videos and I would emulate the dance moves, right? And even though I was a heavy kid, my sister saw, wow, this guy is really good. Like he can moonwalk. He's got the little things going on. I should put him in the talent show in his elementary school. And so she signs me up for the talent show. And I was so nervous, right? I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm just a young boy. I'm like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old. And I'm in the talent show of the school and I kill it. I absolutely crushed it, right? I got a standing ovation from like all the kids. And what I realized was, and the story that I got attached to was that when I'm performing, when I'm entertaining and I'm getting attention, that's when I'm loved. That's when I feel love. And so that created a story for myself and behaviors in me that was constantly looking to be entertaining. Right? I always felt that if I'm not entertaining you, that you're not going to love me. And you guys can see this manifest in so much of my world, right? I try so hard to be entertaining on these videos. I try so hard to be entertaining in my ads. I try so hard to be entertaining in my curriculum in the Astro community. I'm constantly trying to be entertaining. And it's not terrible. It's not a bad thing that I do that, right? And so I would say that this story didn't have a super negative consequence. But there are times in my life where this becomes disruptive, right? You don't be entertaining at a funeral, right? You don't. That's something I've done. There was a time in my world when I was a kid that one of our aunts came and shared with the family that she had been diagnosed with cancer. I saw that as an opportunity to start cracking jokes. Like, what the hell? Right. And so you can see that that there has been there's negative things that in my past relationship with my ex, right? There were so many times that I was just said, this guy just doesn't take anything seriously. He thinks everything's a damn joke. Right. Because constantly that's what I would do. Constantly trying to create entertaining situations and entertaining environments so that I'm loved. That's what I would do. So number one, realize the stories that you're attached to. Step number two, reframe those stories, right? You got to go back and you got to look at what is the reality of that story and how maybe you were trying to protect yourself. What protection mechanism was activated in that? All right. So reframing that story is step number two. We're going to dive into these a little deeper as well, guys. Step number three, reinvent a new version of yourself with new stories, right? Reinvent a new version of yourself with new stories. So for instance, for my entertaining behavior, right? Well, maybe that has nothing to do with love and acceptance. Maybe I use entertainment as a way to create engagement, but it has absolutely nothing to do with how much people love me or how much people want to be around me. Or my worthiness, right? My worthiness is not attached to how much I'm entertaining. I'm worthy regardless of whether or not I'm entertaining or not. Because what happens if something, God forbid, happens to me and I can't speak anymore? right? What happens in that situation where I lose my capacity to speak? Then am I less worthy of a human being because I can't make people laugh or I can't be entertaining? No, right? Not at all. I'm not less worthy of a human because of that. And so I can't attach my worthiness to this thing. I've got to be able to reframe it for what it absolutely truly is, right? And in this reinvention, so when I reinvent the reason why I love to entertain and what that is attached to, that gives me a new story. A new story. So it's no longer tied to my worthiness. Now it's just tied to my capacity to engage, right? So I'm reinventing that story and I'm reinventing that version and I'm reinventing the new story that's accompanying it. And then number 4 is to reconfirm that version. All right. Reconfirm that version. So to go over the 4 steps again, number 1, we must realize what stories we are attached to. Number 2, we need to reframe those stories. Number 3, we want to reinvent a new version and new stories that are associated with that. And then number 4, we want to reconfirm that. We want to continuously reconfirm that. And if we use this 4-step framework, guys, we can put this into the rest of our goal setting for the year. And we can find that we can make that identity shift in chunks through the year so that we can actually get to the goal that we are wanting to accomplish. All right. Now, I want to kind of break down these different types of lifestyles that we typically have. And you're probably going to find where you belong in these pathways as I describe them. Okay. So the 4 pathways that we live out as humans are as follows, right? And they increase in vibratory nature. They increase as we go from number 1 to number 4. So you guys will be able to understand and see what these things are. Okay. Number 1, the first pathway that many human beings live through is the pathway of pain avoidance. Pain avoidance. And when you see people living in this pathway of pain avoidance, this is when you are in a very, very victim type of thought loop, right? So everything that is happening is an opportunity or a way for you to avoid pain. So I stay away from this because I want to avoid pain. I'm not going to do this work. I'm not gonna make these phone calls and call these sellers or call these real estate agents because if I do, then I might fail at it. And if I fail at it, then I'm going to be less worthy or I'm going to be less of a human being. So to avoid myself from feeling less worthy or less than, I'm just not going to make the calls. And so that leads to a life of being stuck. That's just what happens. You're stuck. And you get stuck in that cycle. And probably 90% of the people that we run into in our lives are living in the pathway of pain avoidance, right? And that's where we see folks that are just kind of, they've given up. And quite often what ends up happening is they're living in those previous past versions of themselves. Let's just remember some of the stories that are told in this pathway, and you guys might be able to make a connection. Those people that when they're in college, they say, man, my high school years were the best years of my life, right? Now they're in college, they got all this homework to do, they got all these things. But they're just reminiscing about high school, and high school was like the best time of my life. Okay. Well, then they get into their careers. And when they're in their career, they're like, man, freaking college was the best years of my life, right? College, I was like the man. I had all the girls. I got the party. I got so much attention. I got, I had no responsibilities. Didn't have to deal with all these bills. I didn't have to deal with all this crap. Man, college was the best years of my life. And then you get married, right? And then you're like, man, those years when I was single, just working, and I had, money, and I could go out to the club, and I could go and just talk to whoever, and I could, make out with whoever. Those were the best years of my life. Now I got all these problems with this wife, or I got all these problems with this husband, and I got all these problems with these dang kids, right? And so you're constantly just living in those past versions of you. And that is typically the pain avoidance pathway, right? These are the people that aren't going to do anything. They're not going to get out of their way. They're going to get stuck. And we find that the behaviors that manifest in this pain avoidance is procrastination, right? So if you find yourself being a procrastinator, you're probably living in pain avoidance. If you find yourself being that analysis paralysis perfectionist, if you call yourself a perfectionist, so you don't do anything because it's not perfect, yeah, you're probably in pain avoidance. Okay, pain avoidance. Now, the second pathway that people live is in just comfort, right? So they're trying to increase comfort. And so also not terrible, right? And in the West here, this is like a massively, like a huge problem, because this is where the majority of us that are living in pain avoidance, this is where we think we're going to be happy, right? That if I just have all of the pleasures, if I just have just more comfort in my life, if I don't have to worry about the mortgage payment, if I don't got to worry about the car payment, if I don't got to worry about, all of the fees that I got to pay for the kids' dance and sports, if I could just have a little bit more money, if I just had a little bit more, if I could just do these extra things, I'd have more comfort. I'd have a little bit of a bigger house. I'd have a more comfortable bed. I'd have a, cuter girl, whatever. I might be more comfortable, right? And that's the second pathway that many of us who are getting out of pain avoidance find an anchor to as what's going to be the best thing for us. But then you get into that life where you have increased comfort, right? You got the bigger house, maybe you got a little bit of a better car. And then all of a sudden you're like, man, I really like these comforts. I'm actually going to do everything that I can to avoid pain at all costs. And I'm just going to create a fantasy life of just positivity, right? A fantasy life of positivity. Now, you see a lot of people in spiritual paths and in spiritual communities. This is where they live, right? This is where the people who are like, man, you're just, just completely ignore negative things, just completely ignore negative feelings, just completely ignore anything that is wrong, just completely ignore it, okay? And just focus here, just focus on positive. Now, it's much better than the first two, right? But you're kind of not living in the real world. And if we go back to what Carl Jung said, right? Carl Jung said, you can't solve any problem, you have to outgrow them. One more time, you can't solve any problem. You have to outgrow it. So if you're just completely ignoring the fact that these pain things or that these things that are obstacles or issues exist, then what are you doing? Right? You're not integrating the wholeness of who you are. You're still going to get to those places where maybe you're laying on a beach. And guys, I've been in this. I think I sat in number 3 for 5-6 years, possibly, right? Just like super positive, just constantly just focusing there. And then anything that was negative, I was like, get it away from me. As a negative person, get it away, get them away. There's a negative situation, get it away. I just don't want to focus on this at all. I stopped listening to Tupac. I love Tupac, man. What's wrong with me? Why would I not want to listen to Tupac every once in a while? He's amazing. But I just stopped listening because I'm like, oh, the negativity in here is infecting my mind and it's going to make me more aggro and la, 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 la. So I'm just completely lying to myself, right? Now, what ends up happening in this third pathway is you get what's called hedonic adaptation. Hedonic adaptation, right? That's when the pleasures of life stop being pleasurable, okay? The pleasures of life stop being pleasurable. Give you a case study for it, right? I wanted a Rolls Royce so bad. I wanted to be in the car with a Starlight headliner. I wanted to have, $500,000 car. I wanted to drive down the road and I wanted people to look at me and be like, that guy's driving a house. Who the hell is that guy? Right? I wanted that. I really, really wanted it. And then I got it. And I don't know, maybe 30 days into having it, I was like, this is like no better than a Honda. For real. Like, I just adapted. It wasn't fun anymore. It didn't have that same dopamine effect. I wasn't getting the same euphoric feeling. In fact, when I was driving down the road now and somebody's looking at me, I'm like, oh, stop. Right? Or somebody honks at me and they give me a thumbs up. I'm like, right? It's just like, it doesn't matter anymore. And it doesn't matter what car I buy. I bought so many of them. Doesn't matter what car I buy, that hedonic adaptation is always there. Within a couple of weeks, the euphoria of it, the sense of accomplishment, all of that, it's out the window. It doesn't even matter anymore. And so now I know that when I attach myself into thinking that I'm going to have a better life to these objects, that they're really not going to do it. I also had the same situation about a house on the water. I wanted a, if you looked at any of my old vision boards, a beach house was like front and center. Okay. So I get one. Yay. And for a while, I was like, man, I made it, right? I'd open up my window and I'd look out at the sea and I'd look out at the beach, all the, the girls running around in the bikinis and the families with their kids. And I'm like, man, my life is dope. This is so cool. And then it just becomes what it is, right? It's just life and it's just a house. And so you start to realize that in these comforts and in these things, there is really just no fulfillment. It's just another thing. I'm as happy in a Honda as I am in a Rolls Royce. And I'm as happy in this little 2-bedroom apartment that I live in when I'm in Canada than I am in my 5,500 square foot mansion in Phoenix. For real. I'm just as happy in this place. I have my kid here. I've got a simple life. Like when I come to visit, it's just normal. And I'm super, super, super happy with it. Like it is just incredible, incredible. But I had to get to that point, right? I had to be able to understand that. Now that fourth pathway, and I believe that this is the way we should all be striving to live, is when we see our pain as opportunities to grow, right? So if I was to really look at the underlying thing in my life, like what is the reason why, Jamil, you feel like happiness is going to come from a Rolls Royce? Oh, it's because I believe that if somebody from the outside sees me and thinks I'm cool or thinks I'm good or that I'm accomplished, that their approval is going to add to my self-approval, right? And that's the destructive behavior, because that is not an authentic reason to drive a Rolls Royce. It's not. An authentic reason to drive a Rolls Royce would be the quality of the stitching of the leather, the smell, the craftsmanship, the fact that there's an umbrella in the door. I don't know. I don't know what the authentic reasons to drive a Rolls Royce are because I didn't have one. I had an inauthentic reason to want to drive one because I wanted to flip an attention, right? And so when you can see that, it's the attention that you were seeking. Got it. Well, why? What's the underlying situation there? That's that fourth pathway in life where we actually get to confront the shadow. All right. Now, how does this have anything to do with identity? Because we need to understand and we need to bring to the surface the shadow self in order for us to be able to make the identity shift, because we have to embrace the things about us that we may be hiding from, or the things that we may not like about ourselves. Now, if we're going to look at what the shadow is, it is obviously a difficult thing to see because it's the shadow, right? It's hiding. It's typically hiding in plain sight. So some exercises that'll allow you to spotlight what the shadow aspects of yourself are the following. Okay. I want you to write down what has recently triggered you. What has recently triggered you into an emotional response that was negative? What have you recently been triggered by? You can type it in the chat or you can write it down on your piece of paper. If you write it in the chat, I'll be able to talk about it a bit. What is something that has recently triggered you? And guys, if you would do me a favor, please, and just hit the like button. If you're getting any value out of this conversation today, then do the right thing and hit the like button so that we can have more people get this recommended to them in the YouTube world. Because for whatever reason, YouTube's just like, nah, we don't need people to be happier. So let's just not push this video. So just hit that for me, guys. There's 117 of you on here. I hope there's 117 likes. I hope. Just that little bit. Okay. So what has recently triggered you? Right? The next thing. No, let's talk about this. Okay. So Matthew says, not having money. Not having the money I want, not being as far in wrestling as I think I should be. Okay. Sharon writes, I spent Christmas alone. My family is toxic. That triggered me. Okay. Alexander Whitfield says, being lied to, being played with, not cared for. Okay. Joel telling him, people around me telling me to stop this, ... What is it that they're asking you to stop? So what has recently triggered you, Pansy? What is a situation that has recently triggered you? What is a situation that has recently triggered you? Dimitri says, my wife saying how I should cut out some sweets and pointing at my belly. Okay. Got it. Right. So that triggered you. All right. What in someone else, someone you don't like, okay? What is something that they've done that bothers you? Okay, write that down. What is something that someone you don't like has done that bothered you? What is something that you've recently done or something that someone has done that you don't like that bothered you? Okay, so Lucas says people complaining and whining, especially friends and family. Pansy said my business partner put me in a place recently with a personal situation. Okay. Dorian says someone told me the truth. Brian said telling me what I'm thinking in the moment. Dimitri says social influencers getting gullible people to buy products that are worthless. Okay, cool. I love it. Okay, now in that thing that you see that somebody did that bothered you, ask yourself the question, how am I that? How am I that? Because typically the things that trigger us in others are the things that we don't like in ourselves. How am I that? How am I that? And the reality is that aspect of ourselves that we don't like, right? That aspect of ourselves that we don't like, or that we see in somebody that we don't like in them, is typically why we don't like it, right? Because we see that in ourselves. And so being able to confront that in ourselves is the work, right? Being able to confront that in ourselves is the work. That's where we get a massive opportunity to be in that fourth pathway where we integrate and we accept the things about us that need to be outgrown. Now, I want you to make a quadrant because we are getting into the process of shifting identity, and I got 12 minutes to get us there. All right. Quadrant, just like a cross, right? New page. Now I want that first one to be the realizations. Okay. Remember, there was the 4-step process. We got to realize, right? After we realize, we want to reframe, and then we want to reinvent, and then we want to reconfirm, right? So realize, reframe, reinvent, reconfirm. So in our first quadrant, the realize section, in the 4 parts, one is mind, one is body, one is spirit, one is relationships. Okay, these are our 4 quadrants. Now, what do you realize about yourself in how you are treating your thoughts in your mind, right? The way that you are processing. What are things that you realize about yourself that need adjustment? Okay. Now, in that second box, in body, health, What are things about yourself that you realize that you could do better in health? Right? One of the things for me, I would say, would be my diet. Even though I've done a really good job of maintaining consistency and exercise, I do it 7 days a week. I would also eat wings 7 days a week. My diet is trash. I got way too much work to do in the diet category. And hopefully I will, well, not hopefully, I will make those changes. I will be making those changes because I realize it. I'm aware that I eat like an 8-year-old boy. Okay. So again, in the realization, first is mind, next is body health, and then spirit. Where do we have an opportunity? What do we realize about ourselves and our spiritual development that we have work available to us, right? In the way of how we are dealing with our spiritual life and our spiritual worlds. Have you been saying to yourself that you're going to meditate every single day and you don't? Have you been saying to yourself that you're going to pray every day and you're not? Are you finding yourself only praying when life is hard or you want something, right? Is meditation only coming to you when you are in a real crisis? Is that when you're coming to it, or are you using it as preventative medicine, right? Are you looking at it as the antidote, or are you looking at it as the thing that stops or keeps the condition from happening? And then relationships, that's where we all the things happen, right? Relationships could be love, it could be money, right? So what do you see or what do you realize about yourself in our relationships, right? Well, how are your love relationships at the moment? How are you showing up? What about your business relationships? How are you showing up? What about your relationship to yourself? How are you showing up? Right? So that first realization of our current identity, where are we right now? And be very honest with yourself here, because it's not a place of judgment. You're not going to write these things down to call yourself bad, right? There's nothing bad about this. We're on a journey here, guys, right? We're on a journey in life, and we're supposed to start at the place where we're kind of like bums. That's the hero's journey anyways. You get shaken into action, right? You got to answer the call to action. Now, what I want you to understand is that when you are looking at those realizations, okay, I want you to understand, like, what is it about it that you don't like? But I want you to see how that behavior or how that thing about you was a protection mechanism that you put in place to survive, so that you can give yourself grace in that realization, because that's super important. We don't want to be sitting here judging ourselves and calling us wrong. We need to understand that the things we do, the overeating, the over drinking, the oversharing, the oversexing, the over all of it, right? The lying, whatever it is, the procrastination, the perfectionism, all of that is a protective mechanism meant to keep us from harm. Okay, so give yourself grace. Second quadrant, okay, again, mind, body, spirit, relationships. How can we reframe those original things that we saw in the realizations? How can we reframe, now that we understand how they were protective mechanisms, how can we reframe each of these things? How can we reframe our thought patterns? How can we reframe the things that are going on with us in health? How can we reframe the things that we are doing to ourselves or not doing to ourselves or for ourselves in a spiritual context? And how can we reframe these things from the perspective of our relationships? Right? How can we reframe that? All right, one more quadrant. Right, next page. How can we reinvent ourselves? Okay, so again, mind, body, spirit, relationships. How would you like to reinvent the thought processes, the things that you're doing in your health? What is the reinvented? What is the 2.0 or the 3.0 version of you actually doing? Mind, body, spirit, and relationships. How can we reinvent? And then number 4, reconfirm. Okay, again, draw the quadrant. Mind, body, spirit, relationships. How can we reconfirm in small steps how we can get to that reinvented version of ourselves, the 3.0 or the 2.0 version? Reconfirm. Now, again, this reconfirming, guys, that's where we allow ourselves to have that growth, right? And this is where people are falling off. And so this is why when you do this in smaller stages, when you do these in smaller stages, we can give ourselves grace for falling off, right? We can give ourselves grace for maybe going a little slower or for having smaller stages, right? Because we need this to be manageable. Because I'm not doing this again. I'm not going to screw up another year where I don't do the thing that I was meant to do. Because I can't keep having that feeling that I'm meant for more and then let another year go by and not have done something about it. Does that resonate? I can't let another year go by where I have that feeling in my gut that I'm meant for more, and then I've done nothing about it. It stops now. Again, those 4 R's, for those of you that are asking, we need to realize, reframe, reinvent, and reconfirm. Realize, reframe, reinvent, and then reconfirm. And I promise, if you use these steps, if you do this in stages and you reconfirm with yourself, and I would say the cadence to do this reconfirmation should be quarterly. Okay, you should do this, just treat it just like a business. Just like you would looking at what's going on in your business every quarter, what is going on in your life every quarter? And my hope is that by the 4th quarter of 2025, we are in a cadence of reconfirmation, the 3.0 or the 2.0 version of ourselves over and over again. And so what I will do is every quarter we'll revisit this conversation. All right, and we'll see where are we getting? How much progress have we made? I'm on this journey with you guys. There's so much about me that I want to evolve. There's a Jamil 3.0 that is dying to get out. And I am so grateful to be able to share that version with all of you through the next year. So 2024 will be coming to an end. I give you all so much love. I hope that your New Year celebration with your family and your friends is incredible. I hope that you really see the value in yourself and that you understand that you are here for a purpose, that God gave you breath so that you could change the world. And I'm expecting that of you. So all of you who tuned in today, thank you so much. Happy New Year. Happy holidays to you. And we'll see you guys all at the first Sunday of 2025. God bless you. Take care.